Hello everyone, and welcome to class for today, Monday, October 19th. I hope you had a great weekend, and I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but hopefully this will suffice for you. Okay, just a reminder, we talked on Wednesday about our next paper, which is due on Wednesday, October 21st. The paper on the play years. Remember, you're going to a toy store playing with some toys. It is on page 9 of your syllabus. And do remember there was a typo in the syllabus. It should read a minimum of 8 paragraphs, not 7. If you have any questions at all, don't forget to ask me right away. I am available via email all weekend. Okay, so last time on Wednesday, we discussed the beginning of cognitive development in childhood. Again, we're in that early childhood age, around ages 2 to about 7, those preschool years through about kindergarten. We talked about Piaget's pre-operational stage and Vygotsky's social cultural view, which are two of the main theories of cognitive development in childhood. I wanted to show you a quick video comparing these two theories. Okay. hopefully that gave you a nice little summary of the difference between Piaget and Vygotsky. If you have any questions about what we talked about last time, again, feel free to email me. I am available via email all weekend long, or you can ask in class on Wednesday. Okay, so let's see what you remember from last week. According to Piaget, which of the following types of thinking do we not see in pre-operational children? Do we not see animism, artificialism, intuitive thought, understanding of conservation, or egocentrism? Now, if you don't remember what any of these mean, make sure you go back, read your notes, reread your text, ask if you don't remember. But which one do we not see? We do not see an understanding of conservation. One of the key points of pre-operational children and pre-operational thinking is the fact that they lack this understanding. They don't understand that things sometimes look different, but their properties remain the same. When children do understand conservation is when they're going to move into that next stage. Okay, another question. According to Vygotsky, children's thoughts structures develop from their own attempt to modify their own internal schemes, their own experimentation with characteristics around them, the languages they hear around them, or the biological maturation of their nervous systems. Think about for the minute. What did we just hear in the video, and what did we talk about last time? What do you think Vygotsky says? Did you say C? If so, you're correct. Both A and B are really Piagetian type of thinking. And D is going to be more about the information processing theory that we'll talk about here in a few moments. Another question. Which of the following statements would Piaget be likely to say? The child is an active seeker of knowledge. Hearing language is necessary for children to form cognitive structures. The social world facilitates a child's development. Or peers and adults are necessary influences for a child's development. What do you think? I hope you said A. Piaget says children are active seekers. They're little scientists. They're constantly trying to seek the world. The other three are much more Vygotskian type of concepts. Okay, so what are we doing today? Today we're going to finish Chapter 8, talking about information processing, which is another theory of cognitive development. We'll talk about the idea of metacognition, which is thinking about thinking, and a topic called the theory of mind. We'll touch a little bit on language development, and just a little bit on early childhood education and what we need to do to have our children be ready for kindergarten. Okay, information processing. We are on page 249 of the text if you are following along in the textbook. The basic premise to information processing is the idea that humans process information similar to a computer. So we use words like encode, process, and store. So just like in a computer, first of all, information has to get into the computer or into your head. We have to encode it. So if you're typing a paper, you have to use a keyboard, or perhaps you're using a touch screen to get the information into the computer to begin with. Okay, so we have to do something to be able to encode the information into our brain. We have to hear it. We have to understand it. Okay, once it gets into the computer or into the brain, we have to process it. Okay, by processing it, it's going to help us understand it. We're going to hear lots of sounds. We're going to feel things, but we have to be able to process that information. This might sound a little similar to what you talked about in sensation and perception in Psych 1010. Right? We're perceiving it after we've sensed it. Okay, and then we finally have to store it. We have to save it somehow. Have you ever had the situation happen on your computer where you thought you saved something and then later you couldn't find it? You either stored it in a place you couldn't find it or didn't actually save all the way. I've had that happen on a flash drive before in a big hurry, tried to remove the flash drive too quickly, and oops, it didn't really store there. Same with our brains. Sometimes we put things in our brain and we can't find it, or we don't get it all the way there. Okay. Some of you experience this on your exam, right? You thought you knew it, you thought it was there, but it wasn't quite all the way stored, so you had a hard time recalling it later on. So basically the idea is that we process things in our brain similar to a computer. As our brain matures, as our neurons get stronger and our synapses grow, it gets better, it gets faster. We talk about things like processing capacity. Processing capacity is how much our brain can hold. So processing capacity is the amount of information a person can remember or think about at one time. Okay? We often measure it by presenting a series of pieces of information very quickly and counting how many items a person can remember in exact order. Okay? So as the age increases, so does the number of items recalled correctly. And there's a figure on page 8.5 in your text that kind of shows this, that at age 2, we have about 2 or so memories digits recalled. By young adults, it's around 7. Okay, for adults, we say 7 plus or minus 2. We tend to remember between 5 and 9 items. Okay. But also, how efficiently do we process information? As we get older, our brain moves more towards automaticity, which means it's doing things automatically on its own. When we are processing things with efficiency, it means we are speedy, we are accurate. Okay. The key assumption of the information processing view is that there's a limited amount of capacity available at any given time. Okay. We can only do so much. The more it is automated, the more we can hold. The more you understand something or you really know something, the more you're going to be able to process later on. Here's a video that's going to talk a little bit. Okay. So the information processing model, again, it's comparing your brain to a computer. One of the most important things to talk about in terms of information processing is the idea of attention. If you don't pay attention to something, nothing is going to get into your brain in the first place. So if you were just watching that video, if you did not pay attention to what she was saying, you may remember that there was some drawings and a black background, but you don't remember actually what she said. So actually paying attention is important. Younger children have more trouble with that than older children do, obviously. Attention is defined as the ability to focus on a particular stimulus without being distracted. As you get older, you can maintain better focus. You can pay better attention to information. Children will learn strategies to help them stay attuned to things. I know I have to use strategies sometimes to stay attuned to certain aspects of things. Okay, that is the information processing theory. Next, we're going to talk about something called metacognition. Do you ever think about your own thinking? Remember, the word cognition means thinking. When you think about cognition, think about thinking. Okay? When you add meta to the front of it, we're talking about thinking about our own thinking. Okay? So here we're thinking about thinking. Do you ever wonder how in the world you will ever be able to remember a complicated set of information like this chapter? Or even the name of someone you just met? If so, you have engaged in metacognition. Children have to learn how to think about thinking. Okay. One of the main ways that we study metacognition in psychology is something known as a theory of mind. The theory of mind is a coherent and integrated framework of concepts about the mind, how it works, and why it works that way. Okay. We're on page 253. An integrated understanding of what the mind is, how it works, and why it works that way. Basically, does your child have an understanding of what the mind is, and that your mind is separate than my mind? We talked a little bit about this when we talked about emotions last chapter, or last time, about children learning at the end of infancy, toddlerhood, learning that they had to that their thoughts are a little different than someone else in order to feel shame and emotions and like that. So this is kind of an integrated or an expanded version of that information. One way we test theory of mind is something known as the appearance-reality distinction. We're looking at the appearance-reality distinction. It's understanding the difference between how a real object appears to be and how it actually is. So what it actually appears to be and how it actually is. You're going to get a very good view of this on Halloween very shortly. There are always children who get very scared at Halloween because they don't understand that the person behind that mask is my mommy. There was a famous, not shouldn't say famous, but a very well-known video I've seen on America's Funniest Home Videos of a little girl who was dressed to the hilt as a witch. Her mom painted a face on. She was all excited. She was jumping up and down until she looked in the mirror. Even though she wanted to be a witch and she was excited about being the witch, she turned around, she looked in the mirror, and she got very upset very quickly. She could not have that appearance-reality distinction, didn't understand the difference. Shows that she doesn't have a quite good theory of mind. Okay. Part of the theory of mind is also understanding the beliefs and desires of other people. Understanding that my mind is different than your mind. That what I think is different than what you think. One of the most famous tasks that we do to test this understanding is called the false belief task. The false belief task is testing whether or not you understand that someone's mind is different. So for instance, you have a box of crayons, and inside that box of crayons you would assume that there's crayons in there. However, you're being tricked. Inside that box is actually M&Ms. Okay, so you show a little kid the box, and they say, "Oh, look, there's a box of crayons. Yay!" But then you open it up and you show them there's M&Ms inside. They go giggly, they think it's funny, ha ha, you tricked me. Okay? But then you ask them, your mom's outside. She didn't see this box. What does she think is inside this box? A child who does not have theory of mind is going to say, Mom's going to think there's M&Ms in that box. Because I know there's M&Ms, so that must mean that Mom thinks there's M&Ms. Let's watch some children do this task. Okay, what'd you think about that? Pretty interesting, huh? It's hard to believe that children might think that way, but they do. We also know that language is important in the development of theory of mind. Language plays an important role in the development of theory of mind. Talking to children beginning at a very early age about mental states such as desires and emotions, thinking, etc., seems to help them. Children who have that conversation regularly do better on theory of mind tasks earlier on than other children might. Okay, so language and talking to your kids is very important. An interesting, more recent discussion of mirror neurons, and it's, I can't find the date on here. I mean, it says 2006, 2011, so this is really relatively recent, is the discovery of a possible neural basis of something called a mirror neuron. And basically, mirror neurons are neurons that fire when individuals produce an action and when you observe someone else making that action. The neurons mirror the behavior of someone else. So because of these mirror neurons, it helps us connect with someone else. It helps us learn this theory of mind idea. One of the theories that they're working on with this is that perhaps there are social interaction issues for people who mirror neurons do not fire appropriately, and that might describe some of the things we're seeing in autism. Again, very early recent research, hard to know exactly what's happening there. Okay. All right, another aspect of cognitive development, as always, is language development. Last time we talked about language in terms of babbling and cooing and first words, etc. And we said that children speak their first word around age 1. Well, did you know that by age 2, they're speaking about 200 words? Okay, that means they are learning a lot of words very, very quickly. By 6 years old, a child on average knows about 10,000 words. That's about 47 words per week, on average 7 words per day. And again, we know that the more parents talk to their children, the more language they use, the better and stronger the vocabulary the child has. We talked before about fast mapping, how sometimes it only takes one instance for a child to pick up on language. We talked about that in terms of some bad language and how children pick up bad words very quickly, but it happens all the time. Children map things very, very quickly in terms of language development. Another tool that children use to help them figure out language is something known as syntactical bootstrapping. Excuse me. So syntactical has that word syntax in there. Okay, and this is using syntax, using meaning for the clues. So using a bootstrap, pull yourself up by a bootstrap. Your book gives the example as, if you encountered the sentence, Will is pitting his cereal. The placement of the new word along with the ing ending would lead you to infer that pitting is an action and not an object. In contrast, the placement and word structure in the sentence, Will threw his pid, would lead you to infer that pid is an object, not an action. Okay? So children will use these guides to help them learn language. We do it all the time without even thinking about it. We hear a word that maybe we don't know, but we use the context to help us figure out what that word means. So children learn that very early, and they're picking up on that very, very quickly. As children are using language, they are not quite so good with grammar. They tend to mess things up quite frequently. Over-regularization is a common mistake in grammar. We talked last time about how children overextend and underextend words. That has kind of resolved itself as they get older, but over-regularization still is occurring a lot. This is basically when a child tries to apply an ending to a word that doesn't really get there, so they make a mistake. So a 3-year-old might be quite capable of saying, I saw fish in the pond, but they might also say, I seed fishes, because ed is often an ending that means something's in the past. Instead of I saw, I seed. My daughter makes these mistakes all the time, and I'm constantly correcting her some. It's important not to overcorrect your kids, though. Don't make them feel bad about making those mistakes. I go to the store. Oh, you went to the store. That was great. A lot of times just repeating what they're saying, kind of correcting it without even pointing out they're saying it wrong. The more they hear it correctly, they'll eventually get it right. They also have to learn at this age the social rules of discourse, how to talk to each other. One of the most important, learning how to take turns. the idea that one conversational partner makes a contribution, then the other, and you had to go back and forth. Children do that pretty early. Even as babies, they'll start doing their babbling, blah, 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 and you say, oh, that's so sweet, tell me more, and they go blah, 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 back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That is occurring. But as they get older, again, it has to take some time, and that's something we have to teach our children. They need to learn not to interrupt and to take their time to talk when it's appropriate. On table 8.1, page 258, they discuss facilitating language development and suggestions of what you can do. Here is a kind of a bad picture of it, but it gives you the main point. Hopefully you have your book so you'll be able to see it better. But things that you want to do to help facilitate language development in your children. Be an active listener. Participate in the conversation. Active listening is huge. Put down the phone. Talk with your kid. Make eye contact with them. Be a good role model. Again, if they're saying something wrong, just make it sound correctly yourself. Don't necessarily ask them to fix it. Don't say, oh, no, don't say soup, don't say soup. Just say, oh, you want soup? Repeat it correctly, and they'll catch on to it. Talk, talk, talk. Don't talk too fast. That's a huge thing for me. I have to watch this, how fast I talk. Be supportive. It's okay for them to stumble over words and to have problems, so make them feel supportive. Reading. Reading is huge. Read to your child. They suggest that when you're pregnant, start reading to your child. Read to the child every day. It instills a love of language. It helps them understand rhyming and letters, and that words make sounds, or letters make sounds, and they form words. Reading is the best thing you can do. Have tools available, paper, crayons, pens, etc. Play word games. And if your child shows some problems, be patient. Slow down even more. Don't interrupt them. Don't fix the sentence for them. It may be hard to be patient, but it's one of the best things you can do. But basically, be open with your kids. Talk with your children. Have real conversations. And the more you do that, the better their language is going to be. Okay? We've talked about this a little bit previously, but we know that children learn languages faster when they are children. So speaking more than one language is when someone is bilingual. So if you're bilingual, you are fluent in more than one language. And there's a couple different types of bilingualism. We can have both additive and subtractive bilingualism. An additive bilingualism, a person learns a second language while they still maintain their first language. And in subtractive bilingualisms, they lose fluency in the first language as a result of acquiring that second language. Okay, so this really depends usually on the situation that their child is in. So perhaps a child has learned Chinese, and then they are living in the U.S., so they're learning English as well. If they're still living with their families, their biological families, they're probably going to keep their Chinese language as well, so they'll have additive bilingualism. Children who have maybe been adopted by an English family, an American family, who doesn't speak Chinese, will probably lose that Chinese, and they'll have subtractive bilingualism. Okay. Children can also become bilingual either simultaneously or sequentially. In simultaneous bilingualism, they're basically learning two languages at the same time. Okay? So they're learning both at the exact same time. So from the time they're born, they're brought home, perhaps, and they're taught both languages at the same time. Both English and Spanish are being spoken in the home regularly. In sequential, children learn one language first and then begin learning the second. That's usually what happens in the U.S. We usually learn English first, and they eventually learn a second language. We do know that if it is sequential, the younger children are when they do that, the more easily they're able to do so. And again, it depends on terms of whether they'll keep both languages or lose one language, depending on the situation that they're in. Okay. When they are learning two languages simultaneously, research shows that children learn the vocabulary and grammar of each language separately. Okay. Bilingual and monolingual individuals use the same general brain structures when processing language, but they show different patterns and sequences of neural activity. Okay. Learning two languages is not necessarily difficult. Sometimes children will go back and forth between both languages, and they might use a wrong word here or there, but kids are very adept at this, and they do a great job. In general, if you can teach your child two languages, I strongly encourage this process. All right. Moving right along to early childhood education. Most children will start kindergarten at around age 5, but many children are enrolled in a preschool or nursery school program that includes an earlier process. Okay. How effective are these early education programs? If you look at pages 264 and 265 in your book, it kind of goes through some of these effectiveness processes. It depends on the program. Some programs are showing some good long-term effects. Others aren't quite so good long-term, but it does help short-term. Excuse me. Children in interventions show an immediate gain of about 8 IQ points immediately, but a lot of times that fades away during elementary school, so they seem sometimes to have early gains, but it doesn't last long. Children often score higher on reading and mathematic achievement tests. Again, they sometimes fade, but sometimes the achievements do last through adolescence or into young adulthood. Children show better academic progress on odd measures, such as fewer students being placed in special education and the like. And children also show other social and health benefits. Less likely to have been arrested, to have received welfare payments, or more likely to have a better paying job, or to be employed or own their own home later on in life. So a lot of the programs really are iffy in terms of whether they are appropriate or not, whether they have long-term benefits, but it's one of those things that it's not going to hurt your child to do. So I strongly suggest early education if it works for your child. The book does discuss several different types of projects. There's Head Start, there's Abecedarian Project, the High Scope Harry Preschool Program, the Chicago Longitudinal Study, etc. Lots of programs that are available to your child. The thing is getting the best fit for your kid. We have to discuss what our children are prepared for in terms of being ready for kindergarten. Kindergarten readiness is important. There's many things to look at. Their age. Are they chronologically old enough? Are they physically healthy to do so? Are they able to communicate verbally? Are they ready for it? Are they excited about it? Do they have the good social skills to be in kindergarten? Can they follow rules? Are they recognizing letters? And see my little note about parents there. We need to be helping our children learn letters from an early age. Again, just lots of reading, lots of introductions in that, and make it fun for young kids. I read an article in Time magazine several years ago that talks about how kindergarten is a new first grade. We do require our children to learn a lot in terms of needing it for kindergarten. Kindergarten readiness really comes into play mostly for children who are born in that kind of bubble year. If they are young 5, are they ready for it? We didn't have that issue with Keely because she was born in April, so she was 5.5 by the time kindergarten started. So we didn't have that issue, but a lot of times children who are on that bubble age-wise may have times. Some studies have shown that it's better to have your child repeat kindergarten or stay back and start kindergarten a little bit later if they're socially not ready for that classroom setting. So again, something to discuss with your pediatrician, with the school, to figure out what is best for your child. Some of the discussion is, though, that do we expect too much from kindergartners today? Is that kindergarten really a new first grade? What do you think about that? One of my good friends has a daughter in kindergarten, and she's bringing home about an hour to 2 hours of homework every single night in kindergarten. Seems to be a bit much to me. My daughter does not have that kind of requirement in kindergarten. But do we expect too much? What do you think? Since we can't talk about it in class today, I am setting up a discussion board in Blackboard. You can post your response and get 5 points extra credit. And then you can also reply to one of your classmates' posts and receive another 5 extra credit points. So 10 points extra credit, which can basically be the difference between a letter grade on an exam. It will be posted separately, but that's what adds up to. The discussion board will be made available on Monday morning, so if you're watching this early, it'll be there Monday morning, and it should be posted before class time on Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to see what you think about kindergarten and whether or not we really require too much from our kindergartners today. Okay, so in review, we talked about information processing and how our brain is thought in that theory to be like a computer. We talked about the issue of metacognition, how we think about thinking, about theory of mind. Do we understand how other children see the world? We talked a little about language development and the importance of helping our children learn language. And we touched on early childhood education and kindergarten readiness. Do you have any questions about today's material? Again, feel free to send me an email, give me a phone call, post a message in the discussion board if you have a question. I'm happy to help you with understanding this material. All right, for Wednesday, make sure you finish that play paper. It's due on Wednesday in class. I'm looking forward to reading it. It always gives me some fun ideas. Unfortunately, my daughter's getting a little old now for this age group. Remember, the toys should be ages 2 to 7. It was really helpful when I did this paper when my daughter was younger. But it's still fun to read about the different types of toys you find. Make sure you're working on your My Virtual Child. Don't wait on that. It says set 3, but set 2 is due in a week. Not set 3. Set 2 is due in a week on Monday, October 26th. Make sure you are reading Chapter 9 for Wednesday. And don't forget to post your extra credit post in Blackboard before class, because I will not accept it after class starts. Okay? Our exam 3 is due in 1 week from Wednesday, so a week and a half from now, but a week from Wednesday. And again, set 2 in My Virtual Child is due, not set 3. Okay, I hope you are doing well and that this lecture helped you out. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you on Wednesday.